Hey guys, so today I want to go over my Merc setups, what I think is to be the most ideal and best Merc setup for this character and for a lot of characters in general. So I'll go over some main Merc setups more than just one. I've been using this Merc mainly, like the KB Wander one. It's Strength Dex Int, meaning it can wear all armor in the game, which is pretty strong because there's some combos you can't do unless it's all three attributes. Why am I using this Merc exactly? So there's two main reasons. One, obviously, the strength dex int. Other reason is also it has LA weakness and haste. So haste is very nice, makes you go faster for mapping. Pretty nice quality of life. LA weakness, also pretty nice. Even though I do self-cast this myself, I actually can't apply it because I only have one curse limit. I use Assassin's Mark. So I can still benefit from this LA weakness, and I self-cast it myself because I do use Balance of Terror for the 40% as extra damage. So yeah, has LA weakness, very strong curse, and haste, very strong aura. On top of that, has both kinetic bolts and greater kinetic blast. This is insane coverage. So if you have stuff like exposure on hit, a curse on hit, this will apply to every monster on your screen, extremely consistent. This will apply to every monster on your screen, and it's extremely consistent, more so than like any other Merc in the game. So yeah, this is the main reason why I'm using this Merc, mostly for the Strength Dex Int, but other utility stuff is also nice. I believe you could also get Rallying Cry in this Merc instead of Frostwing or a movement skill, but I haven't found one yet. I'm not too sure. But yeah, you want LA weakness and you want haste on this Merc. Now besides that, what are the main items I am using? And also some replacements you can do as well. So I guess first things first, the reason why I'm using this Merc over a lot of others is for Garp or Ephemeral. So what does this do? Essentially, if you put this on your Merc, it makes you semi-crit immune. Nearby enemies cannot deal critical strikes. So this is pretty much crit immune. It's a 6-meter radius. Now it's not full crit immune. It doesn't work for boxes because boxes don't count as enemies, even though they do crit. And it also has nearby allies action speed cannot be modified to below base value, which is extremely nice, especially for tier 17s. For me, this is straight up mandatory to use on Mercs in tier 17s or tier 16.5s because there's so many action speed modifiers in these maps, especially if you're doing Deli on top. This is just straight up mandatory, which is why I'm using this and why I do think it's, probably one of the best Mercs you can do. Yeah, the chest is very, very, very strong. It is a little bit expensive, I believe. Let's somewhere around 6 divines or something. Price will probably go down in the future, but yeah, if you can't use this, use whatever chest, but it's the reason why I'm using this Merc. Next important piece is probably Calm Spinen. Everyone's pretty much using this. Essentially, nearby enemies convert 25% of fizz to fire damage, which is more or less going to give you like 20 to 25% physical DR, just extremely strong because their fizz damage convert to fire, and then that fire damage is reduced by your elemental resist. For me, I have 90%, so this is a massive damage reduction. Very, very strong item. Legacy of the Fury. This is the next reason why I'm using this Merc. Once again, it's Strength Dex Int. This chest actually only count as intelligence. It's not a strength chest. So this is, a armor evasion item, and this is an intelligence item. So you can't use these together unless you have a Strength Dex Int Merc. So yeah, Legacy of the Fury, also pretty strong. 15% Scorch essentially, which is, 15% pen more or less. Very, very strong effect for a boot slot. Gloves. The only important thing here is fire exposure on hit. So 11%, you can get up to like 16% implicit if you want to invest into it. Also just pretty nice, a lot of free damage there. Amulet, resolves heart. I do have allocated Snow Forge. I think the Merc does ignite because it does have base crit. And if a Merc has base crit, then it can ignite. In theory, my Merc does ignite. I don't know if there's a better anoint out there. If someone does have a better idea, let me know. But yeah, negative 5% to all resist when he ignites. And nearby enemies are covered in ash. Covered in ash gives enemies negative 20% movement speed and makes them take 20% increased fire damage taken. So extremely nice for the amulet, especially on this build since we're mostly fire damage. Crown the Tyrant, this is quite expensive, but it has a lot of flat added damage. So you nearby allies have flat added damage. I use a green socket to have more Trinity uptime, but a red socket's also fine if you're pure fire damage. And it also gives nearby enemies negative 10 all max res. This helmet is just massive damage buff. You get a ton of flat added damage, and you also get negative 10 all res enemies. Very, very nice. It is pretty expensive. If you can't afford this, I think the next best is a Trickery Helmet, which does curse enemies which hit you with a random hex, ignoring curse limits. So on certain bosses like Fortress Boss, this will apply like every single hex in a game, which is pretty nice, and it's a very, very cheap option. As for the wand, I'm just using Eclipse Solaris wand. I don't know if there's anything better. Essentially, this makes enemies blinded, which is like pretty nice. If you have evasion, it makes your evasion more effective, and if you're like a crit build like mine, it gives you more accuracy essentially. So overall, pretty nice. And then I have for shield, I couldn't think of anything better. I think a sap on block shield with life gain on block is probably ideal. My shield is just a ton of block and a ton of resist because you do want your Mercs to be res cap. Chaos res, not as important, but if they're res cap with life regen gear, they'll pretty much never die. And that's also something to mention. On my gear, I'm making sure to get life regen. Life regen is extremely strong on mercs. So I have life regen on here and I craft life regen. Life regen on these gloves, also crafted life regen. It is pretty important. Also life regen implicit on this garb, which is pretty nice. Now for the last 2 items is the rings. So we have anathemas. Anathemas makes your curse limit equal to your maximum power charges. So by default, mercs do have 3 power charges. So this is +3 max curse on your merc, which is pretty nice. So my merc can use ally weakness, it can use flammability, and since there's my 3rd curse myself, Assassin's Mark, won't get knocked off because our merc has 3 maximum curses. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. If you're using 2 curses on your merc, he needs +3 curses, or else it will knock off your own curse. So yeah, anathemas very nice. Now you could get +1 more curse if you want, and how you can do that is by anointing Zov's Heart with +1 maximum curse on the tree. This will work. I'll make it 4 curses. I'll give you 4 power charges and thus give you 4 maximum curses. So that's another option you can do. Also for the glove slot is Asenap's Gentle Touch. This applies Temple of Chains. You can also get like another corruption on implicit, like Enfeeble. This will be a way to apply a lot of curses. So you can get another curse to Amulet. And you can also use a wand for +1 power charge as well to get 5 curses on your merc. So you can apply like 4 curses on your merc, 1 curse is yourself. That's another angle you can also take with this. Then the last ring is flammability. Once again, just for the curse, negative fire damage or negative fire resist enemy. So overall, this merc is pretty nice. It's giving me a lot of utility, you know, PDR from the Conf Binding, action speed immune and crit immune from the chest, and then a lot of damage to everything else. Overall, extremely nice merc to have. If you want more utility, you can use the Asenap's Gentle Touch. Now I want to go over a few other mercs. So I get the question a lot is why not use like that Flame Link merc, the pure strength merc? And the reason why is for the stuff I just mentioned. If you use pure strength, you cannot use garb, which in my opinion is just straight up mandatory in tier 17s, unless you know you are a trickster or jug yourself. In that case, you are action speed immune. Yeah, that's why I don't use Flame Link. I do think the Flame Link merc is nice, like a weaker character. If you're just starting out, just entered red maps or whatever, it is pretty nice. Just give you that a lot of bonus damage. But once you have enough damage, like my character, it's just not needed, and the utility aspect of merc becomes a lot more important, at least in my opinion. But I will show some other mercs you can use as well. So there's this guy, he is strength int. So the reason why this guy is nice, he can use all the same gear as the other merc except the boots. But the reason why he's nice is that he can dual wield scepters, which is pretty important because then you can use Sign of Sin Eater, which enemies inflict elemental ailments on you instead of nearby allies. This essentially gives you ailment immune. It's like an 8-meter range, so it's very consistent. You put this on your merc and your ship just ailment immune. Really nice. And then the other scepter, which is essentially 100% increased damage with hits against hit enemies, and he hinders enemies. So yeah, you get 100% increased damage and become ailment immune with a dual wield scepter merc. It's extremely nice. Notice for skills, he gives you anger and wave of conviction. Wave of conviction applies exposure, so you wouldn't have to use the gloves, and you could use Asenap's Gentle Touch instead for more curses. So overall, pretty nice auras and stuff here as well. And you have stuff like Purifying from Flame, which is Consecrated Ground. That gives you life regen and reduce effective curses on you. So yeah, pretty nice utility overall, especially with the dual scepters. This was a merc I was considered using. It is overall pretty good. Then the last merc I want to go over real quick, I don't have it, but I do have a screenshot, is this Dex Int merc. The reason why this merc is pretty nice, it's both Graze and Aspect of the Spider and Clutches of the Dam. Clutches of the Dam gives you a massive slow of enemies. Aspect of the Spider makes nearby enemies take increased damage and slows them down. And then Grace gives you a ton of evasion. This is more so a heavily defensive merc. If you have Grace plus a Jade Flask, you're going to have like 70% increased evasion, which is just absolutely massive for mapping and survivability. So if you want survivability, this would be the merc to go to. It is Dex Int, so you can't use the strength gear, but you can still use stuff like Garb. So I did want to mention this real quick because I do think this merc is pretty nice for the utility aspect. Anyway, that's our merc setup. That's all I'm doing for it. That's the different options you can use. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions to improve my merc, let me know down below. There's definitely some other stuff you can do as well. But overall, I really like my merc setup. He's giving me a ton of damage, more than 50% more damage on the setup. I think it's going close to like 70% more damage while giving a ton of utility as well. And the haste is pretty nice for speed. Yeah, that's about it.